Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Joachim Torrano. I'm here to present on the future of the New Zealand waste industry. I'm going to start off with a series of quotes. The first one is one spoken by the Cardinal John Dew and repeated by the current Pope, Pope Francis, highlighting our duty to the environment regardless of our religious persuasion. The second quote is one that you may have heard before in this competition quite a few times, actually. Sir Paul Callahan's most famous words were in fact about protecting our Christian environment more than anything else. The very last quote that I'm going to show you is one spoken by our current Prime Minister, John Key. Yes, it was an election year, but I still believe that he meant every word of it. The most important thing to take from this is that regardless of your religious, political, or scientific literacy, we all have a duty to the environment, and if you believe in that the same as me, prime ministers, cardinals, and scientists as well, I'd like you to raise your hand and not be embarrassed. Thank you very much. I'm a health student and entrepreneur from Dunedin, Otago. For those of you who haven't been there, this is what the environment looks like. For those of you who have been there, it kind of looks more like this on occasion. Is there any way we could play that video? Not at all? Yeah, we had earthquakes and floods earlier this year, and there were several canoeing club students canoeing down past the Leaf for anyone that was interested. It's a very good video. You should all pay attention to it. The environment in Dunedin does have its fair share of problems as well. We were categorized as the most polluted city in Australasia by the World Health Organization, and levels of PM10. PM10 stands for particulate matter of up to 10 micrometers in size, and it's a measure of air pollution. WHO guidelines are at 20, PM10 per cubic meter, and Dunedin sits at 25, which is definitely quite bad. The levels of PM10 in Dunedin are cyclical. They rise in the winter and fall in the summer, and because of that, the Otago Regional Council put out a report saying that it's due to solid fuel burners. However, the baseline levels actually sit at about 22, so there's definitely a lot coming from somewhere else. It's my suggestion that it comes from landfill decomposition, which is a serious problem in Dunedin. Our local councillor, Ian Featherston, has said himself that we have these accumulating problems with non-degradable waste in our landfills that are only set to increase. We have 3 operating landfills in Dunedin at the moment, Green Island, Fairfield, and Wakawiti. And Fairfield and Wakawiti are set to expire the resource consents next year, and after that, the level of waste is set to triple. This is a graph by the DCC. I think that that's the main point of all the PM10 levels that we're getting in Dunedin as well. And because of that, a lot of that is from non-degradable wastes, such as plastic. Plastics.org.nz put out a study saying that as much as 1/5 of our total landfill volumes are expected to be plastic. And it's also why there's such a recurring topic of conversation in the news, as you can see here. There's a lot of talk about plastic bags, especially because they're our most disposable application of plastic. But one of the weird things about the New Zealand plastic industry is that we don't actually produce any of it on our own. We import all our plastic. We're a processing economy when it comes to plastic. It's our biggest import. In 2007, we spent $5.7 billion on the use of on petroleum and petroleum-based products to make plastic. 5 years later, we spent nearly $8 billion on that. Over $8 billion on that. That fraction rose from 1/5 to 1/4 in as little as 5 years. This is an accumulating problem that we have done nothing to address. The biggest use of all this petroleum is used to make LDPE, which over 50,000 tons of which is used each year, and the biggest application of that is in supermarket bags as well. It's also used to make stuff like cling wrap, bread bags, 6-pack rings, other stuff that you'd find in your local supermarket and definitely in your trash at home as well. We do recycle a lot of it, so we do need to give credit where it's due. We recycle about 12,500 tons each year. However, I just told you that we produce over 50,000 tons, so we only recycle as little as 1/4. The applications for recycling plastic go in our roads, go in soil conditioning, potting mixes, all that good stuff. One thing, though, is that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, has said that they only recycle 2% of their total LDPE. So it is an indication that as the economy scales upward with its use of plastic, the actual recycling of this plastic does not scale upward with it. Where does it all go? The problem with recycling plastic is that we can't pay for the labor cost of sorting and cleaning it. It remains contaminated. We can't sell it to recycling companies or recycle it ourselves if it's contaminated as well. It ends up in landfill as a result. These are from the Ministry of Environment. About 10 to 15% of our national waste streams are plastic. In Christchurch and Dunedin, for the landfills over there in 2007, 2008, and a few years later, plastic waste streams rose from about 10% to about 12 or 13% in each one. So this isn't a problem that we're minimizing despite all those social awareness campaigns that we've already put in. In summary, as far as LDPE is concerned, each year we produce over 50,000 tons, only recycle less than a quarter of that. That means that over 37,500 tons of LDPE ends up in our landfills, in our waterways, oceans, or wherever else. We don't know. There's no way of knowing. 32% of our total plastics produced are LDPE, which goes to show that of that $8 billion budget that we had in 2012 for petroleum, $2.2 billion gets turned into LDPE, and $1.7 billion ends up in our landfills and trash. This is a $1.7 billion problem that we have done nothing to address. When it's in the landfill, it does nothing but just sit there. They've done respirometry tests, scientists, where they measure the amount of degradation over time in reaction to UV light, which is really the only thing degrading plastic in landfills, especially considering that most of the plastic is underneath everything else, so UV light doesn't even reach these anaerobic environments that Jennifer was talking about before. These LDPE polymers are highly resistant to degradation, and that's why they're so popular in packaging as well. There's also the potential for toxic leaching through the soil of landfills into underground water streams and ultimately affecting microorganisms that move up the food chain and have a chance of getting to us as well. Like I said, we do need to give credit to the amazing number of environmental policies that we've put in. The Waste Minimization Act of 2008 is one of them. We are addressing this environmental problem more and more as time goes on. So in the future, maybe we won't have to worry about it. However, that does nothing to address the levels of current non-degradable waste in our landfills at the moment. However, there is something great in the sense that we have an answer in the folds of emerging science. This is a transmission electron microscope image. They basically look at electron density to visualize things on a very, very small level, showing fungal mycelium, the root-like structures of mushrooms, covering a plant cell wall. Plant cell walls, such as the main constitutive part is cellulose. That is what plastics were originally designed from, which is an amazing thing, bakelite and stuff. And because of that similarity and overlap between the chemical structure of these plastics and plants, that's the basis for the science of bioremediation, the removal of plastics using the biodiversity of the life that we have at our disposal. It's already been done by a few other companies, some in New Zealand, some overseas, to treat oil spills and contaminated soil in the form of in situ or ex situ bioremediation. In situ being what you see up there, the removal of oil, and that's ex situ, where you take everything else, you extract it, and put it into a bioreactor that is capable of doing it at a much more accelerated rate within controlled conditions to make sure that organisms don't leak out into the environment within containment. This has been done by Yale University, put out a study that looked at the degradation of LDPE, which said that it was biologically possible. However, the enzymes secreted by these Pseudomonas bacteria weren't developed enough to degrade them at a sufficient rate. However, we believe that that's just because it is an emerging science and hasn't been developed enough yet. That doesn't extend to just LDPE. Polyester polyurethane and polyester-based plastics have also shown to be degraded by endophytic fungi and other bacterial cultures. Endophytic fungi are fungi that grow off the tree's walls as well, going off the chemical similarity that I mentioned earlier. The only thing that we really need to do now then is take the emerging science that we have at our disposal, utilize it as well as we can, and also raise environmental and social awareness. We need to make our waste streams more mainstream. I'm part of a company called EWM. We have a website and a Facebook page and about 200 likes at the moment, which is quite cool. And we have gathered a collective of geneticists, environmentalists, ecologists, government regulators, and entrepreneurs across Otago and the South Island to bridge the gap between the NZ environmental scene and the science of bioremediation. To this end, we've already contacted the Center for Innovation at Otago, the genetics and microbiology departments, to facilitate the research that we all need to do The genetics and microbiology departments at Otago are some of the brightest minds in this field, and that's why I think New Zealand is more poised to strike at it than any other country in the world. And we've already contacted the Timaru and Dunedin City Councils. They'll start giving us the plastic that they've collected, and all we need to start this research at the moment is the funding to start the initial part of the enterprise. In summary, the environment is everybody's concern. There is a problem that we haven't addressed at all to begin with. We know how to help. We know how to do this transition. We would like everybody's help in also participating. The whole point of these Eureka Awards are to highlight the environmental, social, and economic benefits that we can provide to New Zealand. And I believe that we have one that ticks and thinks out of every box. Thank you very much.
So, is it Joachim or Joachim?
It's Joachim.
Joachim.
Thank you, Kim.
You want people to do more research?
We're developing the research ourselves. I've already talked to prominent professors at Otago that specialize in environmental remediation and the taxonomy of New Zealand wildlife.
So you're specifically talking about fungi, are you?
Not necessarily. We're going to be doing genetic screening across a whole host of organisms. I can't talk too much about the details and the enzymes that we're looking for because I was told by Gavin Clark, the Director of Research and Enterprise at the Center for Innovation, that we're developing an intellectual property. And because of that, we need to be a little hush-hush on some of the details.
Makes it hard to judge you in competition.
It does a little, doesn't it?
A couple of expert questions from my friends on the panel. How exactly does low-density polyethylene's toxicity emerge? Why is it toxic?
There is no proven health risk to humans. However, it has been shown that the degradation can lead to the production of bisphenol A, which at high concentrations have been proven to disrupt the way that our cells actually reproduce and could cause cancer. It is a protein carcinogen. The current levels of bisphenol A production in leachates from landfills have no effect on us. However, if this problem isn't addressed, maybe one day it will. And we have no idea when that will occur either.
And the process by which solid plastic in landfill becomes PM10, a particulate matter, how does that happen?
That's degradation via UV light. So the constitutive polymers, these long chains of carbon molecules, the UV light gives this energy that collects over time, and eventually little parts of it break off. Harvey was talking about the decomposition of compost and other food wastes.
Yep.
Leading to the production of methane. It's a very similar process to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.